bursting down the seam to the net, backhander. Oh, what a beautiful drag move. And I can't believe it, though I should by now. Connor McDavid, a brilliant goal.
Marner closing in to Tavares. Scores! Holy Mackinac, some magic from the magician. And Tavares finishes.
Pushes it behind his net. Russ with a turnover on the wraparound stuff attempt. Scores! Brian Rust! And you can lock the doors and turn out the lights.
With that, we welcome you to another edition of Our Line Starts. Paul Burmeister, Keith Jones, and Patrick Sharp. I think these two guys felt sorry for me that my only NBC podcast experience was slumming it with Chris Sims talking NFL. So I get to talk hockey with you guys.
We're glad to have you here, buddy.
Yeah.
Welcome to the big leagues.
Yeah, you finally made it.
I know. I don't know about seeing Jonesy without a tie and Sharpie with a hood on.
Yeah.
You know?
I would have put a nice shirt on, but I missed the shuttle from the hotel again for the fourth
Sorry
time.
about
He
that,
was
buddy.
late.
in 5 weeks.
It wasn't his fault, actually. It was
it's-
my fault. I took the shuttle again. But he's some lessons are hard.
Never leave
For
a
the
man
fourth
behind.
consecutive week, it was your fault, Jonesy. But hey, we're here. We're starting on maybe a little late, but we'll get it done.
There's always hope. A lot of season left. Maybe the fifth time we'll have we'll all be prompt. So here's what we're looking forward to today on Our Line Starts. Some star players sidelined. We're thinking about Pittsburgh and also Toronto. Pierre McGuire spent some time with Arizona head coach Rick Tocchet. We'll check in on that. We'll also look ahead to the Hall of Fame class of 2020, considering that this year's class is about to be inducted. And coaches' creative methods of motivating. I want to tap into these two guys, what they remember about being motivated. That's a nice way of saying being called out, singled out, those kind of things. But as promised, the injuries, some concerns, some big-time concerns in Toronto and Pittsburgh. Let's begin in Toronto. Mitch Marner is out. So let's get the exact wording here. We'll miss at least the next 4 weeks with an ankle injury. Maple Leafs in pretty good shape right now. You think they'll be able to hang on to that without him?
That's a tough loss. When you look at the Maple Leafs team, they just played in Chicago a couple nights ago, got a good chance to watch that team from start to finish, and they're already missing some key players throughout this season. Zach Hyman hasn't played a game yet. I think he's a workhorse in that lineup up front. They've done a good job playing 7 or 8 games without John Tavares, who's now healthy, back in the lineup. But Mitch Marner is one of those guys that play makes out there. He hangs on to the puck. He's always looking to create for his line mates. And he makes a big chunk of change, too, in the salary department. So you take him out of the lineup, and that's a different-looking Toronto Maple Leafs team.
Probably the closest guy to Patrick Kane, right? With his skill set, unique talent, clearly a star in the league. So that's a big pair of skates to fill for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think they're deep enough. Having Tavares back in their lineup certainly makes them a much more competitive team. He is the captain of the team. He is a type of player like Crosby that scores a ton of goals in and around the blue paint. But Marner's ability to turn the defensive side of the game upside down for the opposition is going to be missed. So Toronto has enough depth. You'd like to see Tyson Barrie start to play better for them on the back end. It's taken him a little while to adjust to being with a new hockey team. I think if he gets his game going, that could alleviate some of what's missing from Marner's game.
And the power play is confusing to me in Toronto for some reason. It's a legitimate top 10, maybe top 5 power play in the league, and the numbers are struggling to start the season this year, despite Austin Matthews having on pace for a career season. I think he's on pace for 110 points right now. He's playing fantastic hockey. So Toronto's got some issues there. Keeping the puck out of the net is ultimately going to be their goal. Watching them play a full 60 minutes, they have no problems creating offense. They have no problems making plays through the neutral zone, in the offensive zone. They have some dangerous goal scorers. It's limiting those scoring chances against that's going to be key for them.
After the game the other night, you surprised they waived Hutchinson, or?
He had a tough start in that one. I haven't watched him play all season long, but 3 goals on 6 shots kind of changed that game. No doubt about that. But the second half of that game against the Hawks, it was a Toronto Maple Leafs assault on Robin Lehner, 57 shots on net. Lehner making 53 saves, and the Hawks get out of there. If they would have played 15 more seconds of that game, it might have been a tie game, but the Hawks win in a 5-4 shootout, to say the least.
Well, thinking about the number 15, 15 years, that's a number of seasons Sidney Crosby has played in Pittsburgh. Only one time has he gone an entire season, all 82 in the regular season, with playing every single game. So he's going to miss some time once again. We just found out, you probably saw the injury on Saturday in the third period against Chicago. Lower body, it's what's being called. Did not make this trip out east against the Rangers coming up tonight, which is Tuesday. Also later in the week against the Devils. They've gotten used to playing well and winning without him. That's previous versions of this team. How about this year's Penguins team built to to win without Sidney?
Yeah, they can, and I think that's based on the historical perspective that you just gave there. Letang is also out. 2 major losses. I mean, Letang is such a unique player in Pittsburgh's lineup because on the back end, he is their best offensive player. He's their most physical defenseman. He's very good defensively now as well. So the combination of both guys being out of the lineup would not surprise me at all to see Pittsburgh sputter a little bit right now. I watched Crosby a couple of weeks ago live, and he was phenomenal. There was times this season, even starting when we're talking before the season started, I'm like, Connor McDavid's the best player in the league. I watched Crosby that game, and I came away from it saying Crosby's the best player in the game because of everything that he did. I mean, the way that he battled in the back check, the way that he dominates the puck possession parts.
Did you think that last year, in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I was ready to hand it over to McDavid, and then after that game and seeing all the things that Crosby does so well, you played up close with him, but so he's going to be missed. The numbers without him are remarkable to me, what the Penguins have done, but I don't see it as something that the Pittsburgh Penguins want to be without their best player for a little bit of time.
They've had injuries all season long to key players. Malkin's been out, Rust has missed a lot of time, Letang and Crosby now. Let's not forget that those guys played a ton of hockey in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Those playoff games add up, and it's no coincidence to me that guys are starting to go down in the regular season. It's a lot of wear and tear on the body, and the way Sidney Crosby plays the game, he's always in and around those tough areas. So it's a challenging injury to overcome. I know the record that Pittsburgh has without Crosby in the lineup is astonishing to me. They always seem to pull up their socks and play well. Short term, I think they can manage it. If he's out for a significant period of time, I think they're in deep trouble. They've really adopted this north-south, fast, high-energy style of play. With all these injuries out, they're calling guys up from the minors, and they're playing a quick game. Now the attention goes to the other superstar player up front, and that's Evgeny Malkin, who, take a look at his numbers when Sidney's not in the lineup. They're pretty impressive as well.
Yeah.
You were without Kane for a while in Chicago, Taves as well. Talk about that from that perspective of being another player who's getting maybe some primetime minutes and a chance to really show what you can do.
It was always exciting for that first game that Kaner wasn't playing, because then all of a sudden you get a few more touches on the power play. The puck runs through you in different scenarios, but you're out for 3, 4, 5+ games without superstar players, and all of a sudden you're asking, when are these guys getting healthy and coming back? There's a reason why the puck goes through Patrick Kane, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin on the power play. That's who you want to have it. So I say any of these major injuries, it's a wake-up call to the rest of the team. You can sustain it for the short term, but you got to get these guys healthy for 82 games if you want to win.
Short term is the key, isn't it? I can remember being in Colorado back in '97, the year after they had won the Cup, and we lost Sakic and Forsberg at the same time. And I'm thinking, this is not going to be pretty. And then we went on this run. Without those guys, I think we lost once in 8 games when both players were out of the lineup. And it was different players picking up the slack. But we had a deep team, much like you guys had in Chicago, and also had the confidence of winning the Stanley Cup, the team that is, prior to that season. So there is something to be said about that. I think it plays into what's happening in St. Louis right now with Tarasenko out of the lineup. There are some guys that have experience, championship pedigree, and they're able to sustain a really high level of play for the short term. Not sure how long they will be able to sustain that.
It's funny when you look at projecting future games with an injury, a guy out of the lineup, oh man, this is bad shape for that team. The same can kind of be said about a team that's sputtering through the regular season. All of a sudden they play really bad one night in a winnable game. Now you look at their upcoming schedule, they got some really tough teams coming in. Oh man, that's a recipe for disaster. I think the opposite happens. The team says, we better play a lot better than we have lately with this good team coming in. So it's a very similar situation to the injuries. I'll be curious to see how long Pittsburgh can kind of stay afloat without Sidney Crosby.
We just saw that with Arizona, right? They've been struggling to hold on to leads. They had Washington coming up. They've managed to beat the Capitals. The Blues are next on the schedule. You're thinking doom and gloom, and all of a sudden the team digs deep and finds a way to win some games that on paper does not look like they should win or even be in. They managed to find a way to get the job done.
Different kind of situation going on with Stars right now. I guess no pun intended with the Dallas Stars and what happened after a recent loss. Let's take a listen to head coach Jim Montgomery and what he had to say.
Are you disappointed with the scoring of the top players right now?
Very disappointed.
Are you seeing signs of progress? Or?
No. Are you?
Yeah. How do you fix it?
Reduce ice time, we've tried, you know. We're trying video, one-on-one sessions, all those things. But, they got to decide that they want to be a difference maker. I mean, look who scored for the Jets. Right? We got really good big goals by Janmark and Faxa, and that's our third and fourth line.
How important is it with Hintz out and Klingberg out for them to step up?
It's really important. You need your number one center, you need your number one left winger to step up and do more.
Was he in a good mood? How's it going for him that night? Huh?
Wow, we've seen that before. Same situation last year, right?
Exactly. And just to kind of go back a little bit, and he mentioned their positions, and you all know who he's talking about, Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin. But what you just referenced, last year, the team CEO in Dallas also called out the leadership. And, he used his own words and had his own mood with it, but it was a similar message. Is there a leadership problem in Dallas?
It can be frustrating for a coach or general manager to watch Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin play, because there's times when you watch a Stars game and they're the best players in the National Hockey League. They're up and down the ice, they're making plays, they're competitive, they're hungry around the net, and the numbers that they put up speak for themselves. And then there's other times when you need a big win and you don't get that same production, and sometimes it looks like those two players are a little disinterested in what's going on in the game. The fact that this is the second year in a row that they're being publicly called out is concerning to me. The good news for the Dallas Stars is that they've got a ton of young players coming up through the system that have kind of taken that next step in their development. Roope Hintz, we heard, is out of the lineup. John Klingberg's missed some time. Those are two guys that are taking that team over. Heiskanen's another player. So, I don't really know what to tell you about Benn and Seguin. I can see the frustration on that coach's face. Jim Montgomery.
You can tell me more than the other guys in the studio can, because you were teammates with them for the latter part of your career in Dallas.
The last thing I'll say is the fact that Jim Montgomery's going to the media and answering questions publicly like that tells me that this is the last option, and that they've tried other things, the one-on-one meetings, the video sessions. They're trying to motivate these players, and it hasn't seemed to work.
You can go to the well so often, and then eventually you're going to dig so deep and down in that hole that it's going to backfire on your team too. So that's a real fine line for a head coach. It was actually easier for him when the CEO did it,
right,
and not having to do it himself. But you can be guaranteed that he's had numerous meetings with both players as individuals before he's going to the media. If that's not the case, if he hasn't done that, then you could have a major problem. Star players, especially guys that wear letters on their jerseys, have a lot of pull in the locker room. And you have to be really careful on how far you push those guys, or they can not only take their own game, but everybody else with them. You better trust in the younger players that they are capable of separating themselves from those star players.
Yeah.
So I would tell you that Jim Montgomery is taking a big risk here. And
it sounds like you're not a huge fan of it.
Oh, I'm not saying that he's wrong. Trust me, I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm telling you that he better hope that those two players take it the right way. And twice in a year, their names out there. This is, as a player, that is not what you want. You want to be helped to get your game to a higher level, the level that you're capable of playing. But there's times that it can really go the other way. And this is a real risky time right now for the Dallas Stars. Very interested to see what happens here.
I wonder if the fact that it kind of worked last season had anything to do with doing it again the second time. But I'm with Jonesy. That's a fine line you're walking, calling out star players on the team. I was never really the star player of a team the way Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin were, but I know I'd be a little concerned if the coach and the general manager and the team president kept using my name in the media to get motivated. I would be on notice for sure.
There is times though that teammates are seeing everything that they may be doing wrong that's on the ice, that's not what the coach is looking for, where they're waiting for the coach to react as well. There's some younger players in that locker room that may be looking for more responsibility. And maybe they're making every little play, doing everything properly, and then they're watching their star players play and they're not doing what the team is supposed to be doing. So they could be at the point, and Jim Montgomery may have sensed that because he played the game. He's been around the game a long time, that it was his time to step up and make sure that he held everybody accountable. But normally you do that within the locker room.
Exactly.
And that's the challenge. I have to think that he's done it within the locker room. I would be shocked if he's just bringing it out to the media after a loss against a Jets team that has some star power up front that's producing right now.
And Sharp, I want to draw a parallel to you going from so many years in Chicago and being used to that locker room that won a lot at a high level, then going to Dallas and what you thought about that change with what Pavelski is doing. I mean, he got used to a different culture that won at a high level. Now, how do you think he feels, number one, walking into a new situation, and what can he do to help?
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. When you're with a team like a Joe Pavelski that you mentioned, who was with San Jose for such a long period of time and did so many of the details and little things to help that team win. He was a big part of that locker room. Now you shift organizations, you walk into the Dallas Stars, and you want to still be that same player and have the same role within that locker room, but it's a completely different environment. It's not your team just yet. I think Joe Pavelski is inching himself into that leadership role. There's no coincidence, in my opinion, that the team started winning games after that 1-7, 1-8 start, when Pavelski started seeing some more ice time at the center ice position, started taking some bigger faceoffs. So you want to walk, you tread lightly. You don't want to come in there, kick the door down, and say, "Hey, I'm here to save the day." But you observe, you see where you can help out, and you try to attack it that way.
Yeah, and the door's open for him now, too, after that. So then that may play into what Jim Montgomery was doing. Corey Perry is there also, another guy that was, you know, a heart and soul type player for the Anaheim Ducks, important player in the Olympics and one of the true stars in the National Hockey League, who produced at an extremely high level and is battling back from numerous injuries. So they do have those guys sitting there watching this as well. So it's really something that I want to continue to focus on as we move along this season, because on paper, Dallas looks like they should be a very good team. And for whatever reason, they have sputtered a couple of different times to start this season.
Yeah, they can't seem to turn that corner. And I would just hope that Jim Montgomery is not just firing off at the end of an overtime loss to Winnipeg and he's just answering questions honestly. I hope there's a little more calculations that go into this and try to motivating those guys, because you call out your star players year after year, it could have a potential to backfire.
All right, Hall of Fame class, the class of 2019 being inducted this weekend. 6 new members in this year's class. Congratulations to all of them. Let's take a big peek ahead to what could be coming next year in 2020 in that class. Some big names for first-year eligibles, including Jarome Iginla, Marian Hossa, and Shane Doan. Any thoughts? Any one of those 3 guys come to mind as someone you would really like to see go in?
All 3 guys were great players, great competitors. Huge impact on every team that they played for. I know Marian Hossa probably better than all 3 of those guys, and he was a guy that you could rely on each and every night, not only just to score goals and provide offense, but to play that 200-foot game. And as a winger, a European winger coming over to the National Hockey League, he was an extremely valuable defensive forward. One of those guys that should have been nominated for a Selke Trophy at numerous times in his career, probably was a little overlooked in the defensive category. He was great internationally, 3 Stanley Cups. For me, Marian Hossa is a no-brainer Hall of Fame player. I would say the same for Jarome Iginla and Shane Doan. Everything he means to the Arizona Coyotes. I don't know if his credentials have enough to get him in. That's my issue with the Hall of Fame, is what is a Hall of Fame career look like? Is it statistics? Is it what you meant to the organization? Is it team accomplishments? Is it everything rolled into one? NHL Hockey Hall of Fame is a difficult one.
And really, in my eyes, it's about being the best player at your position for a long time. And there's some interesting things that go into that criteria. Was Marian Hossa the best at his position while he was playing? Well, no, he wasn't. There's players that he played with on his own teams that were better as far as being superstars in the league. Hossa was a fabulous, I wouldn't call him a complimentary player, that would be an insult. He was an impact player on a nightly basis, but he had other players around him, and I'm not sure he's winning Stanley Cups if he's the guy that had to be out there at the forefront. That being said, his career was immaculate. He did nothing wrong. He did everything right, and was there at the end, and was a big reason why Chicago won cups, why Pittsburgh went to the finals when he was there, Detroit. I mean, he was involved in, for a long period of time, Stanley Cup championship runs, and some of them fell short, but he was a key contributor to those teams, and I think that's enough to get him in the Hall of Fame. You talk about guys like Claude Lemieux back in the day, and you and I were talking about before we came on the air. His numbers are remarkable when the playoffs came around. He had 158 points in the playoffs. He won 4 Stanley Cups. He had 19 game-winning goals in the playoffs. And his name is never mentioned about getting into the Hall of Fame. And to me, he was a Hall of Fame talent when the games meant the most. And that's why
that should matter
I'm
a lot.
shocked. Yeah, I'm really surprised that his name doesn't get in there. Justin Williams, I'm not sure if he's officially retired yet. He'd be 3 years away before you can put him in the conversation. playoff numbers are remarkable.
Yeah.
Regular season don't jump off the page, and you can make the argument that he wasn't the best player on his team. You had Kopitar when he was winning cups. I mean, there's other players that contributed to the team's success, but his numbers are similar to Claude Lemieux's without necessarily the peskiness and the other things, the agitation that Claude Lemieux brought to the game.
The Hall of Fame, for me, when I look at what makes a Hall of Famer, to me, Jarome Iginla is a Hall of Famer because there was a period of time where you could argue he was the best player in the game. Right around the lockout of 2004, a couple years before that, a few years after, he was the prototypical power forward at the wing position, too. He would fight, he would hit, he would score, 50 goals just about every season. He was a player that I looked at as, amongst his peers, his generation of hockey, he was one of the best.
No Stanley Cup, though. Should that matter?
Not in the case for Jarome Iginla, I don't think. I think he did enough on his own right to get himself in. If Stanley Cups and team accomplishments matter that much, then, maybe those guys from Chicago, maybe I should go to the Hall of Fame.
Hey.
I got 3 Stanley Cups, but the numbers don't back it up quite the same. So that's where you get into a difficult conversation about the Hall of Fame.
Iginla, to me, is Cam Neely-like. Tough, difficult to play against, played longer than Cam Neely, had the element of fear that he put in the opposition because he was a guy that could drop the gloves and would drop the gloves and fight for his teammates and try to change the momentum in a game. When the game was a little bit different than it is right now, Jarome Iginla was a true competitor that was very difficult to knock out of the game. So if you bought a ticket to watch the Calgary Flames play, you watched Jarome Iginla play. Like, you were happy that you were going to see a Flames game because Iginla was part of that. And I think that should always play into players that you're thinking about putting into the Hall of Fame. Did they sell tickets? The kid that was holding the ticket to that game, was he excited that he was going to see Jarome Iginla play that night? And I would have been excited to watch Jarome Iginla play.
I think it's unfair to hold the fact that he never won a Stanley Cup against Jarome Iginla. I mean, he made an effort. He left at the deadline a bunch of times. He chased that Stanley Cup towards the end of his career. He wasn't content in just staying with one team his whole career. He wanted to win. He made the effort to do it, fell short, but that shouldn't tarnish what I think is a Hall of Fame career.
It's like if Marian Hossa stayed in Atlanta, he was not going to win a Stanley Cup. He won the Cups at the end of his career because he was a valuable commodity that every team that felt like they could win it wanted to have on their team. Mark Recchi, very similar, and those are two guys that I would find to be comparables, Recchi and Marian Hossa, because Recchi did so much to, get himself into the Hall of Fame because of the cups that he won, but the point production was there.
He's got to be a Hall of Famer.
Oh, yeah,
Mark
for
Recchi.
sure.
There's no doubt about that, right?
No
It's just
doubt.
a matter of time, I would hope.
Yeah, I think he might even be in there.
It's interesting sitting here listening to you guys with all your years of experience playing and thinking about the Hall of Fame. That about 5 or 10 minutes ago, Sharpie, you said, the criteria frustrates me because I don't really know what it is. Yeah. And then without even thinking about it, both you guys kind of answered it on your own terms of things that really mattered to you, all the way down to, is a little kid excited when he holds that ticket to go in? I mean, it's a non-tangible. It's not a postseason success kind of thing, but I think those kind of things matter. And how in touch is the committee with those kind of feelings would have to matter a whole lot too.
Yeah, and I think they are. And Lindros is the one that really stands out to me. If you had a ticket to watch the Philadelphia Flyers play, you're watching that game because Eric Lindros is playing.
Or I stay home to listen to you to those Flyers.
Yeah,
games.
that wouldn't be good.
That's not a.
You'll sleep
not
well
one
that
matters.
night.
We've been talking about the first-year eligible guys. I want to bring up some of the stars, some of the really good players who've been eligible for a while, but are not in the Hall right now. Let's begin with Alexander McGillney. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd probably put him in. Scored enough goals throughout his career, was counted on in big playoff games at different points, played for a number of different teams. My first thoughts of McGillney are coming over with the Buffalo Sabres and just changing the game. He was just a different player. Jonesy can probably speak to it a little better than I can because you played against McGillney a lot in his career, but the speed, the skill, he's just playing a different game when he came over from Russia. I like Alexander McGillney.
Unique talent and scored highlight reel goals. And if you were at a game watching McGillney, there's a good chance he was going to bring you out of your seats. Yeah. And people are going to cheer for what McGillney was capable of doing on the ice. He was Bure-like in the way that he scored goals. He was an extremely intelligent player on the ice as well, and had an outstanding career. I would have no issue with McGillney getting into the Hall of Fame.
Is Rex in the Hall of Fame?
I think he is. Yeah, he is.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah,
I should have
he
known
is.
that.
Yeah, he walked
There was a
in.
while there when he
Yeah.
wasn't getting in, and I thought, what does he
Yeah.
need to do to get into this?
Yeah, no, he's
Okay,
he's in there.
Here's another name to think about. And Jonesy, let's start with you this time. Daniel Alfredsson.
Outstanding player for the Ottawa Senators and jumped over to the Red Wings near the end of his career. Could score with the best of them. Was Marian Hossa-like in the way that he played the game at both ends of the ice. Extremely responsible player, used in every situation. I'm not 100% sure that I would put Alfredsson in, but without having his numbers right in front of me.
What's the biggest reason you?
It just doesn't jump off the page to me as much as some other players that we mentioned there. But as I say that, I'm sure he's probably a shoe-in to get into the Hall of Fame. But for me, it wasn't something that just made me think, man, he's got to get in. But maybe that style of play too. I appreciated the style of play, like of a Jerome McGinley or Shane Doan. Maybe I didn't appreciate that enough.
Was Daniel Alfredsson a household name, no-brainer superstar of his generation? I mean, he was an all-star multiple times. He was a great player for the Ottawa Senators. I'm not quite sure I'd put him in my Hall of Fame. You know,
yeah, 441 goals is what I'm hearing. So, I mean, it's an extremely good total, but we're not talking 600 like Jerome McGinley.
Exactly.
So
And that's what makes it hard with any sport here. You're talking about great players, just to be even in the conversation. But did that great player take it to the next level? And it can be really difficult, no matter what the sport is, with that kind of conversation. I heard of a guy named Jeremy Roenick.
Yeah.
Some people call him JR.
I was waiting for that name to come up.
We were just warming up. We were warming up with the previously eligible guys. So obviously he's not here tonight. One of the few nights that he isn't standing right there making us all laugh and doing something silly. But JR is a Hall of Fame candidate. What do you think?
I think he should be in there now. I'm surprised it's taken this long. And I played against JR. He was an extremely difficult player to play against. You game plan to slow Jeremy Roenick down. He would run over you. He would fight you if he had to. He would fight the toughest guy on the team if he had to. And then he would score a highlight reel goal. He'd play with his teeth laying on the ice, his jaw broken. He went above and beyond the call of duty on the ice to make sure that his team had a chance to win. The knock is he didn't win a Stanley Cup, but you can't knock him for it. I mean, I don't think there's more than a handful of players did all the things that JR did in order to help his team win and also entertain the fans.
Yeah, right.
That's
there's
the
a
big one.
value to entertainment, and he's got that.
He was a league superstar on and off the ice for years. You see the highlights, the clips of him dancing at center ice, always throwing pucks to the fans. Yeah, we see it every night now. Players stick handle, scoop up a puck and give it to a kid in the front row of the glass. JR was doing that long before everybody in the league was. He's always had time for the media. He was a great soundbite, represented the league well. I think JR is a Hall of Famer. He's an American player as well. I think he's always going to be in the conversation as on that, you know, if you put a best American-born hockey player team together, JR is on that team, no doubt about it. And I've seen that guy take a beating in his career. Jeremy, broken faces, broken jaws, played the game tough, hard, and scored 500 goals. And
that's really no matter the sport, again, when you're talking about was a player great or was he outstanding enough to get in the Hall, the one thing that comes through with respect from the former players is the toughness. And if the toughness is there and the production is there, and the entertainment value, which may or may not matter, depending on who you talk to, is it just the Stanley Cup, lack thereof, that's keeping him out?
No, I think what keeps him out is the entertainment part of it. I think he rubbed some people the wrong way. And I think because he was so flamboyant, because he went above and beyond, that some people may have interpreted that as JR wants to be the show. And that's part of it with JR. But the most important part is he cared about every one of his teammates. He cared about the fans. He stops and talks to every fan. He continues to do that today. But there is some people that I think have gone above their call of duty to keep him out of the Hall of Fame because he was an attention gravitating type personality that did a lot to enhance the game, but at the same time looked like in some people's eyes it was looking at trying to draw attention to himself.
I would imagine, though, and I've only known him the 3-4 years I've been doing this show with you guys. You guys have known him for decades as a player and as a person, but I would imagine he hasn't changed too much. And to your point about maybe some attention grabbing, people perceiving it that way, but also nice to people, you couldn't walk anywhere in this studio or in this building with someone who bumped into JR that didn't like him.
Yeah.
He's nice to every single person. And at some point, that should matter when you're also a superstar.
Sure, it should. Yeah, absolutely.
It should fly in the face for those who say, well, he was just looking for attention, because the people who know him would know that other side as well. Right?
Yeah, Sharpie played with him. He knows.
Yeah, he was a superstar in the league when I was a 20-year-old kid, and I still remember my stall was next to his in the locker room. They're not the main locker room, but the dry stall locker room where you take off your street clothes and put on your Under Armour stuff. And
any PG-13 stories you can tell?
He had about 3 stalls and half of mine in fan mail and gifts and all that stuff. So he was very active as a superstar player, and I just had to kind of lean up against the corner and get changed that way.
Just stay out of his way, or?
I stayed out of his way as much as I could. I stayed very quiet as a 20-year-old kid. That Philadelphia team was loaded. We had Keith Jones in the broadcast booth. I don't think you were quite calling games back then.
I saw you come and I left and quit. That's what happened.
But you were around. We had a lot of star players there. I was just happy to be there. Kept my mouth shut.
There you go. Good way for a young guy to be.
Mark Recchi was there. Hall of Famer Mark Recchi. Sorry,
go.
Rex. I should have known he was in the Hall of Fame. That's my bad.
We corrected that. Still a long way to go here, more to come, including crazy coaching stories. But first, Pierre McGuire had a chance to sit down with Arizona Coyotes head coach Rick Tocchet.
Great to be visiting with Rick Tocchet, head coach of the Arizona Coyotes. You've got a fascinating hockey story to tell. 1984 is when you started in this league. You've never been out of the league since. How you managed to persevere for all these years?
Yeah, great league. Love it. Love the being part of any kind of team building, whether it's as a player, coach, or any capacity. I just love competition. And what other job do you want where NHL hockey to be part of that competition?
Speaking of competition, your first year, 1984, Mike Keenan is your coach in Philadelphia. Talk about Mike and how he's influenced you and about the team in particular in Philadelphia, because it was the old Philadelphia Flyer brand, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Instant family when you got there. Ed Snyder, it was a family atmosphere. I know as a young kid, you felt at home. You know, the transition, obviously as a young kid, it's hard to stay in the NHL, but they really made it comfortable for you off the ice. On the ice, Mike Keenan, he wanted an aggressive team, a very young team, no excuses. He drove us hard. I think he was ahead of his time, Pierre, because he was one of the guys that started the 45, 50-minute high-tempo practices. All the players had their own water bottles. I mean, everybody usually don't have 3 or 4 water bottles. Now everybody had their water bottle with their name on it. Nutrition, he used to have a lot of team dinners. So he was ahead of his time in '84 for sure.
There's a story, I don't know if it's urban legend or true, but you're a Toronto boy, you go back with the Flyers, one of your first times. Did he make you change away from the regular dressing room?
Well, I don't know if, what he do is he puts 2 or 3 of us in a different dressing room just to motivate us. The one story, he called me in the office, he had my jersey in Hershey colors, the Hershey Bears of the minor league team. He goes, if you don't have a good game tonight, your number and name is already over there. And I ended up getting a couple of fights that night and did my thing, and I never got sent down. But, yeah, those are just his motivational things, and, it helped me down the road. I got to really give him a lot of credit for my career.
You talk about fighting. Yeah. You were really good at it, but you could score goals too. When did you know as a kid, I'm going to have to do this in order to survive in the league?
Yeah, probably my third year junior, a little bit, was a pretty aggressive guy. And then, obviously, when you get to the Flyers, it was not so much a badge of honor, just the way, I started to be more aggressive on the ice, and I'd get in fights. And then, the organization didn't tell you to shy away from it because it gave me more room. Obviously, the building, the spectrum, it gets you amped up. So a lot of those fights are just because of the moment, the intimidation, that building. Nobody ever told me to fight. It was just, it just gave me room. And then you start scoring goals because of it.
You had a lot of guys around you. Daryl Stanley was there. Dave Brown was there. But one of your good buddies, Craig Berube, was there. Can you talk about when you saw Craig hoist a cup last year in St. Louis, what you were thinking?
It felt unreal for him. I had beers with them after we beat them 7-1. I think it was at the end of December, January. They were in last place. And I remember that. I was sitting with their coach staff, man Ryan, too. He's a buddy of mine. We sat. He wasn't really panicking. All his coaches 7-1, you're last place. You're like, oh, my God, what's going on here? He just said, I got to get these guys to believe in their roles. I remember he said that to me. And then next time I see it, throughout the year, obviously, and then he's hoisting that cup, like you said. It's a special. He's a really good coach. He persevered. one of my favorite teammates of all time, like a real team guy, and that's the way St. Louis played.
You talk about teammates. You had two, Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, considered probably the two best players in the history of the game, along with Bobby Orr, John Beliveau, and other guys, but obviously right at the top. Talk about your relationship with Mario first.
Pierre, if you look at both, you just said great, generational, unreal players, but they're better human beings. Just great guy. Mario Lemieux, probably the nicest guy I ever met. Doesn't like the big entourage. He has a few close friends. He likes to golf. He's just an even-tempered, very generous guy. Wayne Gretzky, very generous guy. Looks after people. Never, the stuff that they do behind the scenes. Like I'm not going to tell you all the stuff that goes unnoticed is unbelievable. So to me, just to be lucky to call them my friends, I'm a very blessed guy because those guys are great human beings.
Who's a better golfer, Lemieux or Gretzky?
Lemieux. Lemieux, I think he might be a 2 or 3 now. He's kind of lost a little bit on his stride, but Wayne's pretty good too. It's pretty good to have like his partial son-in-law to be Dustin Johnson. But yeah, he's actually improved a lot.
You coach with Wayne. What was he like as a coach?
You know what? Very underrated bench coach. He was really good. He kind of reminded me a little bit of Scotty Bowman. I think Scotty Bowman's the best bench coach I ever played for and seen. When Wayne did it, his bench skills behind the bench were really good. I felt a lot of players would give him. Wayne didn't want players to get intimidated. It's Wayne Gretzky, so he tried to humanize himself, like he'd like to joke around with the players. But he had a lot of fun. He probably did his best job his first year. We didn't really have a great team. I think we were 500. I thought we did a nice job there. Wayne was a big influence on me on coaching.
When you were traded from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, that's one of the most intense rivalries in all of sport. Forget hockey, all of sport, Pittsburgh versus Philly. How did you adjust to becoming a Penguin after all those years of animosity?
It was easy. I got picked. Actually, you picked me up at the airport. I got picked up at the airport. I remember talking to you, and I looked at the lineup, and I'm like, you're looking at Hall of Famers. You're looking at a star-studded lineup. I get a chance to play with Mario Lemieux, Kevin Stevens. No offense to Flyers, because I bled orange and black, don't get me wrong, but once I hit that dressing room and knew that these guys were my new teammates and I would do anything for them, because I knew that was my chance to win a Stanley Cup when I looked around that locker room and saw the talent of players we had on that team.
How did you persevere after you broke your jaw and come back in the '92 Stanley Cup run?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I had a talk with Craig Patrick, and he said, we can wire it shut and do all these things, but you're going to be out for a little bit. And I just looked at him. I said, Craig, this is my chance. Look at this lineup. Look at the team you have here. I just said, hey, listen, let's put that mask on or whatever and go for it. So, obviously, great choice for me because I get to win a Stanley Cup.
You've won the Stanley Cup as a player. You've won it twice as a coach and assistant coach to Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh. How hard was it for you to leave Pittsburgh after the second cup?
Really hard. It wasn't as clear cut. Arizona obviously made it worth my while. Had numerous talks with Mario. Jim Rutherford was great. Mike Sullivan. Probably those coaching years probably learned more than I ever learned being under Sully, that organization, which I love. So it was really tough. It was tough, but I don't know if I would have another chance again, kick at the can, to go to a team that was trying to find its own culture of some young players. So I took the job, and it's been fun so far.
How have you implemented the Rick Tocchet style of play in Arizona?
Sometimes you got to look at your lineup and go from there. And I think we definitely, when I first got it, I wanted to create identity. I didn't know what our identity was. It took us about a year and a half to where we are. We really defended the puck really well, and we have good goaltending. Our D were good. We had some young forwards who wanted to learn how to win. So we've created that style, and it's hard to keep your identity because it's hard to win, Pierre. You know that. It's really hard to win, to do the right things, to defend, to transition the puck quick, to have a middle drive. Like, those are hard things to do, and that's why these great teams do it consistently. So that's something that we're working on here in Arizona.
One of your first pet projects when you were coaching down in Tampa was Steven Stamkos. A lot of people didn't think he could play in the league at that time. You came up with a unique plan to get him a comfortable situation in Tampa. Can you tell us what that was?
Yeah, I just looked at the schedule, and regardless how he was playing or what was going on in the hockey life there, I was going to pick games he'd played. Whether he played 2 or 3 out of 5 or whatever. We got him in the gym. He's an 18-year-old kid, skinny kid, and worked in the gym. And then it seemed like when he played, he had more strength. He was scoring goals, and then obviously the next year, I think he ended up scoring 50 goals. He was unreal. So my point to me was the development of a young kid. You can't be afraid to sit him out for the right reasons. You can't worry about the name. You can't worry about how high he was drafted. I think you got to worry about his development.
Speaking of that, the relationship with Rick Tocchet and Phil Kessel, you couldn't be more different people. Why does it work?
Well, Phil's he's an interesting guy. He does a lot of stuff with Rink that people don't understand. He's a very generous guy. He does stuff that people don't know. Phil sees the game sometimes differently, and that's fine. We might argue or disagree on something, but at the end of the day, he respects who I am. I respect who he is. So I think that's why the relationship has worked out, is because I understand him. Is there going to be some differences? Absolutely, but I think the respect factor is there.
When you're in Arizona now, do you sense that your image and your brand as an organization starting to catch on with the fans?
Yeah, I think obviously John Chayka, working with John with the new ownership, I think they see the vision. So there's not a lot of changeover. There's not a lot of panic. There's not a lot of people coming and going. I think now it's a little more stable, and I think to win you have to have stability, right? We have a vision, what we're trying to do here. Whether we win 5 in a row or lose 5 in a row, I think we're staying with a vision.
Who's a better card player, you or Mark Recchi?
Card player? Definitely me. Rex is not even in my category. I love Rex. Rex is not. Rex is pretty good, but he's not good.
You or Mario Lemieux?
Better than Mario. There's not too many. Phil Kessel might be better than me. He's pretty good, but he's just got more stones, I guess.
When you first came to Pittsburgh, could you believe the card games that were going on the plane?
Crazy games. That's why I think it lasted a year. I think then we settled down because it started getting crazy. I think Jimmy McKenzie won a car one year, Big Mac. But those days are over. They're fun though. We used to have a lot of fun. That team had a lot of fun, and it transpired on the ice.
What was your best memory when you hoisted the cup over your head?
You know what? For me, it was just all the years of, as a young kid watching Hockey Night in Canada, making the NHL, getting traded, being able to withstand some injuries or whatever it was, and just be able to be with a group of guys and accomplish something. As much as you're happy for yourself, my parents, my family who were there, that was awesome. Just to see certain guys lift the cup. We had some guys that, I remember some guys like, Gillen and Mikhailuk, Needham. These guys didn't play a lot, but we needed them at certain stretches of the game. I remember those guys. Even as a coach, I remember the guys that maybe don't play all the time, but it's sometime in that playoff where you needed a guy. I love seeing those guys hoist the cup.
Have a great time this season. Thanks for doing this, Rick. Really appreciate it.
Good seeing you, buddy.
All right, thank you to Rick and also to Pierre. Also recently, Coyotes GM John Chayka signed to a new contract. So you look at the standings, they're re-signing leadership. It appears things are going in the right direction there in the desert.
Yeah, I like the Arizona Coyotes. I like watching them play. I think they're on the up and up. They've got a bunch of young talent that they've accumulated over recent years and sprinkled in some veteran star players, and it seems to be going in the right direction. They're getting good goaltending, and they're doing it all without their best defensive defenseman in Nicholas Yarmulson, who got injured early in the season, and that's a huge hole to fill on the back end. And you look at all the pieces they have, the most important piece to me, and Jonesy knows him better than I do, is Rick Tocchet behind the bench. I think he's a coach that's been around not only as a player, has done it all on the ice, but now he's got a pretty good resume behind the bench as well. He's got that team moving in the right direction.
It reminds me a lot of what Rod Brind'Amour is doing in Carolina. I think they play a similar style. They fell a little bit short last year, but we're scaring a lot of teams down the stretch, winning some really important games and gaining valuable experience that I think they're using to help continue that process this year. I think Tocchet is a very good coach. I think he gets it. I think he understands the players, and I think that's important, but I think they've got a good team. I think they're fast. I think they're built for today's game. I think they've been blowing some leads lately because Hjalmarsson's not out there. Yeah. He is their best defensive defenseman, and they've got some work to do to make up for his absence, but they're getting enough scoring. And they're producing at a high rate of speed, and that's the way they play the game, with a lot of speed. So I don't see them backing off. I don't know about you.
No, every time I went to Arizona to play, I would leave with the same feeling like, man, this would be a great place to play if the team was better. The team was bad for so long, but now that the team is actually winning some games and competing, looks like a playoff team to me, I wouldn't be shocked if star players start choosing Arizona as a destination to go to.
Yeah. Rick also made a pretty good point, a story we've heard, but it's always a fun one to think about when Mike Keenan tried to motivate him, maybe did motivate him by basically saying, your minor league jersey is ready with your number and name on it, sitting right over there. We're ready to send you anytime. Spark any kind of motivational stories or ways coaches try to get you to play better?
I played for Jim Schoenfeld, and I know JR did as well, and he's got some great stories about Shoney. Shoney was a very tough man. He was a big guy. He was an intimidating guy, and I had some battles with him. I can remember one time with Sergei Gonchar was just up from the minors. I remember Shoney in the locker room saying, Sergey, do you like seafood? And Sergey's like barely spoke English. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, you'll be heading to Portland soon if you don't pick up your game. That was our minor league team. He had some great one-liners that he used within the locker room. And I had some great conversations with him that we can laugh about now, but while they were happening, I'm sure I frustrated him an awful lot. One time after practice, he loved the bag skate. He loved to skate the guys. And for those that don't know, a bag skate is the reason that term is used is the pucks stay in the bag. They're not coming out. You're not touching a puck. You're not moving the puck. You're skating, and that's all you're doing, stop and starts. And it can be pretty physically demanding. So at the end of one of those, I was laying on the ice, and I was looking up at the ceiling, kind of doing like a snow angel, just kind of like this. And he comes over, what's wrong with you now? And I said, I'm exhausted. And he said, oh, what? I go, yeah, I'm exhausted. Your practices are too hard. I'm telling you, he's going, okay, hold on, everybody in. Brings the whole team and all the players, right? Jonesy, we've been losing some games at this time. He goes, Jonesy says it's getting a little tough. So he says, we're going to take it easy the next few practices, right? So I'm like, yeah, good. That sounds great to me. We proceed to lose the next 2 games. And now we're playing in Tampa. It's an afternoon game at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm walking in the rink going, man, I gotta pick it up, right? So as soon as I get to the rink, I'm one of the first guys there. There he is waiting for me. He goes, hey, son, step into my office. And like I said, he's an intimidating guy. So he sat on a chair across from me. I'm sitting right here, and he's looking at me, and he says, you be me, and I'll be you. And I'm like, oh, this is not gonna go well. That's all I'm thinking. He goes, oh, I'm tired. My hands hurt. I can't move out there. I'm slumping. And I'm like, so he does his whole spiel. And then Shoney, one of his traits was he'd stand up and give you a fist, right? He was way ahead of his time from the germ thing, This is before people were doing the fist bump. So anyway, he would stand up. So I stood up after he just absolutely verbally assaulted me using what he pretended was my voice. And so I got up. I said, don't worry about it, son. You'll come out of it like this, and give him the big fist bump. He goes, get the out of here.
I thought he'd appreciate that.
Oh, no, that's funny. We can laugh now, but we had some good battles.
It's good solid role playing right there.
Oh, yeah.
Way to go.
Yeah. Coaches that had to motivate me the most were working for the same team. My rookie year in Philadelphia, Ken Hitchcock was the head coach of the Flyers, that I spent 2-3 years in the minor league system with John Stevens and the Philadelphia Phantoms. And I still owe John Stevens a great deal to helping me become not only an American League All-Star, but an NHL player. He turned me into an NHL player. And it wasn't easy. He was very hard on me every day. And I was probably an easy target, fresh out of college, 20 years old. I'd show up to the rink a minute before I was supposed to, right out of bed, no breakfast, hair, mess, clothes, wearing pajamas the night before. I missed the weigh-in a few times. He used to have me weigh in and then report to his office and tell him what the number was. We had video sessions, one-on-one. It was a tough couple of years playing for John Stevens, and I felt like he didn't like me at all. And in a playoff series, we were up 3-0 against the Chicago Wolves in the championship of the minor hockey league, American Hockey League Championship, the final series, about to win the whole thing in Game 4. And after pregame skate, I got into my car, and there was a note, like a thank you note on my steering wheel of my car. And it was Johnny had got into my car while we were out in practice, or the trainers did. I don't know how it got in there. And I'll save you the details of what it said, but it was basically Johnny, I'll paraphrase, saying, I was so hard on you for a reason. it's incredible the strides you've made as a player, as a hockey player, and as a person off the ice, and now you're going to be a champion because of it. And I went into that Game 4 with 2 goals and an assist, and we won the championship. And I never played harder before in my life.
That's awesome.
So John
That's a great story.
2 questions.
Yeah.
Do you still have the note?
I do have it. Yeah.
Do you lock your car now?
It was locked. I think the trainer's got my keys, but I have that note. I carried it around with me basically my whole career. Yeah.
I never had a coach do that to me. I had Shoney tell me, "You've been traded," and he smiled when he said it to me. So that was about the best thing I ever had.
I think he lied to us. He said he used to come to the rink with his hair all messed up.
Yeah,
I believe the no breakfast part.
For him. It's not
I don't
possible.
know. I don't know. I think he just tried to slide that one in.
He looks like that when he rolls out of bed.
Yeah,
that's right. Looks like that when he shows up late to the podcast, right?
Yeah, again.
Guys, that was good. Fun hanging out with you. I want to share one final note before we sign off, thinking about Dallas once again. During the taping of this podcast, Jim Montgomery did tell the media he was emotional after the loss, and that prompted those comments about Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin. Montgomery also added he apologized to the team as well for what he said about his 2 stars. Regardless, a situation to follow going forward in Dallas. And before he said that, you guys both said, you got to be careful when you call out stars like that.
Listen to the podcast.
Right?
Find out.
This
Too
should have
late,
come out
Jim.
earlier, right?
A little late, buddy.
Maybe we'll have one extra member of the audience, a head coach. We shall see. That's it for this episode of Our Line Starts. Remember, a new episode will drop every Wednesday. Subscribe for automatic downloads wherever you get your podcasts, and we hope you spend time with us next time.